to your 5-minute Maximo coffee break. In today's Maximo Coffee Break, we're going to be talking about how do you modify your mass domain name. Depending on where your mass managed deployment is, whether it's on-prem or in a hybrid cloud platform such as Azure, AWS, Google, IBM, you may have a non-standard or non-organizational domain name. Typically, this might be .microsoft.com or .aws.com. What we're here to do is talk about how do we make a friendly URL so that when you provide this to your end users as a standard URL to put into their browser, how does it make it more meaningful or understandable to them? URLs typically in the past, maximo.mycompany.com or mycompany.com/maximo. So something typically sometimes also separated for development, max dev or maximo dev, maximo test, maximo prod. In this case, we're going to be looking at mass manage, and the way mass manage does is it leverages the workspace ID that you've installed and then your DNS. And in my case, it'll be mrmeam.com. There are a couple of prerequisites when doing this change, and this change needs to be in place prior to updating the mass instance. The first is setting your DNS entry. So I've created this table here for the various DNS entries that I'll need. I'll work with my IT infrastructure support organization or department or your cybersecurity network department. They will typically be involved in setting up or determining the DNS entries. And once you've come to agreement on what this naming convention will be, they will create a DNSA record. So in most cases, you'll have to coordinate with your IT department to create appropriate tickets and have these entries added to your corporate DNS or third-party DNS. So in my case here, I've got an example of what we're going to be updating. We're going to be having massdev.mrmeam.com. They're going to get mapped to an IP address, and A records are going to get created. The entry on the left-hand column is typically what is being added to the DNS, and then the generated resulting name will be the full name. So the next step is to have SSL certificates created, and there are two types of SSL certificates you can create it. You can create it for each subject alternative name or subject name. And here I've got 7 different routes, so those need to be created. You typically don't want to create an SSL ticket for each one. You can create one SSL request and define each within the alternative name. Alternatively, you can also use wildcard conditions. Again, work with your IT team. Some organizations prefer not to use wildcards and some will. We will have a separate session or Maximo Coffee Break on how to set up and create your SSL certs and how to define those. Once your DNS entries are in place, once you have your SSL certificate ready, the next step is to log into OpenShift and update your suite custom resource definition and specifically the instance YAML for the domain that you want to update. So let's go see how that's done. Here we're in OpenShift, and once we're in log into OpenShift, you're going to go to Administration, Custom Resource Definitions, and you can search for the keyword being suite, and the one that we're looking for here is suite, which is your core mass IBM.com group. So once we go into the suite, we don't want to jump to YAML. We actually want to go to instances. This will display all your instances. In some cases, you may see more than one instance. You may have one OpenShift cluster for your non-production, which hosts your dev, test, training environments, and then you may have another OpenShift instance for production. So if you do have multiple, you go into the one that's specific to the environment that you're looking to update. In this case, I'm going to go to the instance tab here, and now I'm going to go to YAML. Once I'm in the YAML, I'm going to search for the spec field. You can do a quick Control F and then spec. Find that spec section. You will see the domain name here. So here's my current domain name. What I'm going to do is remove this altogether, and we're going to replace the domain name with massdev.mrm.eam.com. Once we do that, if you are going to be doing SSL, you would want to change the manual cert management to true. By default, this is false. This will put certificate management in your mass suite administration. So once that's done, go ahead and hit save. Next, I'm going to move to routing and go to the routes. Here, this is going to take approximately anywhere from 10 minutes to 30 minutes, depending on your OpenShift cluster and the variables of CPU, memory, and how many instances you have within it. But what this is going to do is in the core, so you typically would have 2 projects. One project would be your core, your other project would be manage. And what would happen is as the reconciliation is going through, it's going to pick up that change and it's going to update all the routes first for the core services. Once the core services are done, it's going to update the routes for the managed services. And once the managed services are done, it will then also be redeploying the pods. The pods in WebSphere Liberty that are running in behind the scenes require that hostname change, and therefore it requires a restart. We're going to speed through this here quickly, just so you can see how the routes get updated and how mass manage will also will be stopped and redeployed. So what we're just seeing here right now is on the left side, we see the pods. So we'll see pods get recreated and rebuilt. And on the right side, we saw previously the core routes get updated, and now we'll see the managed routes. So we can see on the right-hand side that the routes have all been updated. We can see that it's now up and running. So what I'm going to do is copy to the clipboard the Maximo manage route, and we'll just copy that in, paste that in, /Maximo, and it is now connected. It's not secure because the next step is the SSL certificate. As I mentioned, there will be a part 2 to this Maximo coffee break talking about SSL certificates. Because it's not, you have to do this twice, and once we go through that, it'll go through. So that is how you go about updating the mass domain to reflect your environment. As we wrap up each Maximo coffee break, we will provide you our helpful links. So these are well documented, and in some cases the documentation exists, but it may be a little bit misleading on the steps. So hopefully this video helped. There is a support tech note, as well as you can find out more information through the mass continuous delivery pages. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. More than happy to assist.